Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and dear partners of the BMW Foundation Herbert Quandt, I'm very delighted to welcome you here today to our event as part of the Munich Security Conference. A very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to everybody of you. It's the first day of our three-day program, but it's also a day, ladies and gentlemen, when our thoughts and our hearts are with those who are severely and seriously injured in a suspected attack just a few blocks away from here. And I hope you understand that we didn't want to start and begin this conference without mentioning this tragedy. What will the next 3 days here generally be about? And what will be today specifically our focus? Allow me to say a very few words on this. Those of you who are not here for the first time know, hopefully, the mission of the BMW Foundation. Traditionally, they unite the brightest minds from business, from policy, just look around, from civil society to collaborate on forward-looking approaches and solutions to the challenges of our time. The Foundation works across borders, and the Foundation works across cultures to strengthen an innovative and responsible economy on the one hand, while also promoting an open society on the other hand. This year, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, it's all about energy, about the global energy transition, and as well, of course, as since we are a member and part of the Munich Security Conference, about energy security. And today, on the first day of our event, the so-called Energy Innovation Night, we will convene Europe's top innovators, industry leaders, policymakers, all united by one shared mission, that is to accelerate the energy transition that is to strengthen Europe's competitiveness and reduce global emissions, both probably never as important as these days. Just this morning, a colleague from the BMW Foundation, Bennett Barth, who is responsible for, with his team, to put together the program of today's Innovation Night, he posted happily on LinkedIn, and I may quote him, "That's why tonight at the Energy Innovation Night, we're putting the most cutting-edge deep tech startups in the same room with the key decision makers shaping global energy strategy. This is where vision meets execution." I think you cannot name and phrase it better. Respond, that is the name of the BMW Foundation's Deep Tech Accelerator, Respond. And Respond is all about backing founders who don't just dream of change, but actually build change. Meaning energy storage, industrial efficiency, renewable breakthroughs. Deep tech at scale is what will move the needle. In the upcoming 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen, you will learn a lot about those startups from this Respond program, and you will learn a lot about these latest breakthroughs in energy tech. You will hopefully dive into conversations with leading deep tech innovators, and you will have the opportunity to engage with decision makers from global players such as Siemens Energy, Lufthansa, E.ON, the CEO just arrived, BMW, of course, RWA, or better known as RWE, JP Morgan, and many, many others, ladies and gentlemen. Before I invite a wonderful colleague now onto the stage, in just a moment, please allow me to briefly point out a few, just a very few housekeeping notes. I don't call it housekeeping rules, just notes. All discussions taking place, and that's an important one because we don't want to tap into the Hofnaht trap, right? All discussions are on the record and not off the record. Please keep that in mind. Also because we welcome many journalists and photographers to our event. Very welcome to you as well. The second thing you should know is that tomorrow we have a live stream from tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, 7:30 on until in the evening, and same is true for the event on Saturday. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Heba Agib to take the stage. He is a member of the board of the BMW Foundation and one of the hosts of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a big, if not a huge round of applause for Heba Agib.
Thank you. Welcome to the first Innovation Night on Energy Transition at the Munich Security Conference. Here at the BMW Foundation Pavilion, we're going to have an exciting and inspiring evening, I promise. We're going to talk about innovation, solutions, and pathways moving towards the future. We're going to talk about what is necessary and what is possible. And because we are here in Munich, and because we are here at the Munich Security Conference, and the world is paying attention to us, our focus is going to be on Europe's role in the current global energy transition. Now, because we are here surrounded by tech startups and innovators, and because I have engineering in my veins, I will start with the problem that we want to solve. I'm sure many of you have experienced at least one of the huge gaps in the European innovation chain, from the early stage innovation to the first deployment at scale, to expanding to as many regions globally as possible. And the first, we used to call it in my previous role in medtech and healthcare, bench-to-bed problem, is about translating research into applied technology and solutions. And there's a lot to be done here. Now, I'm also sure that many of you in this room have experienced and see the necessity of investing in first-of-a-kind solutions and technologies on the ground to make them having the impact that they should have. Enabling entrepreneurs and startups and innovators to bring the first commercial plants and make it possible to accelerate their technologies. This is necessary in order to make this technology, the clean technology and the innovations accessible to people. Then the last stage, and most importantly, making innovations, competitive solutions, and innovative pathways that make the technologies accessible to as many people as possible. And here, I'm not talking only about local, but global scale. Throughout the whole innovation chain and in all of the linkages between these steps, we must become faster and more effective in order to maintain competitive. So now that we own the problem and we have to own it, we have to own our strengths. Here in Europe, we have great infrastructure for innovation, education, and research. We have a great industrial base. We have, theoretically, one of the biggest single markets globally. We have tech startups and clean technologies. Look in this room and today, who started, by the way, many of you started before energy, clean energy became a political debate or in the mainstream. Because we have people in Europe who feel responsible for their environment and for society. If we're not going to own this, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose talent, we're going to lose tech competitiveness, and we're going to lose trust. Society's trust in us, society's trust in the transition, and the trust of the world in Europe. So we have to own this moment. This is the time to attract the best talent globally to work together. This is the time to bring together innovations and investors and partners together to build, implement on the ground, and show what's possible. This is the time to regain trust and showcase Europe's role and the values of its society. So here in this room, we brought you together, pioneers, innovators across sectors, to increase the odds, to accelerate technologies, to have these debates and conversations about strategies and policies that need to be aligned, to accelerate innovation again, and to shape the future together. Now, I would like to end on a quote by the German president with whom we had the pleasure to have a collaboration during last year, Werkstatt des Wandels, the workshop of transformation, where we were talking about possibilities and showcasing examples of successful transformation, and where we were talking and engaging people about the opportunities that lie within change and that change brings with it. And I say the quote on top of my head: the way we deal with and the way we navigate today's challenges is going to be defined by the way we see ourselves and the way we talk about ourselves. Energy security could be our unifier. We will find the right way to respond. Thank you for being here and enjoy the evening.
Heba Agib, member of the board of the BMW Foundation, Herbert Quandt. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have occasionally wondered to what extent technology can be a force of resilience in an era of global disruption, our upcoming keynote speaker will be of very great interest to you. This may also be because in these days, we no longer can be certain whether technology, and especially some technology companies, contribute to more resilience, or perhaps even more disruption and fragmentation of societies and of values. There are probably few better and wiser actors to touch upon these issues as today's keynote speaker. It's an honor to introduce Leonhard Birnbaum, a visionary leader in global energy sector and the CEO of E.ON, one of Europe's largest, you know that, one of Europe's largest energy companies. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Leonhard Birnbaum has played a pivotal role in shaping the future of energy, focusing on sustainability, on innovation, and on digital transformation. Under his leadership, E.ON has become a driving force in the green energy transition, serving over 50 million customers across over 30 countries. Leonhard Birnbaum's commitment to balancing customer needs on the one hand with investor confidence on the other hand has positioned him as a key voice in addressing Europe's energy challenges. Today, we are very privileged, ladies and gentlemen, to hear from a leader whose insights are shaping not just the future of his company E.ON, but the trajectory of sustainable energy worldwide. Please join me in welcoming on stage Dr. Leonhard Birnbaum.
That is an intimidating introduction. Now I have to live up to the expectation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to talk about energy security. Energy security for anybody working in my sector has always been the key issue, because we all know that modern societies without energy cannot exist. And the way which we see actually aggressive physical attacks against energy security in the war against Ukraine has reminded us how important for modern societies and secure energy supply is. So energy security rightly is a top topic at the Munich Security Conference. Now, I would like to just answer the three questions, or just give some reflections on three questions in my intro, and then hope that the following days will pick it up a little bit and maybe enlighten you or give you new ways of thinking about it. The first question is, what are the challenges for energy security that we need to address? That's number one. Number two is, what actually is energy security these days? What are the dimensions that we need to get right? And the third one is, what is actually the solution and what is the role of innovation in this solution? So first, what are the challenges that we are facing? To put it just bluntly, Europe has not found its position in the world yet. We have the US, which is the largest fossil producer. Nobody is actually producing more oil and gas than the US, and that's giving them a cheap backbone on which they can build. We have China, which is by far the largest producer of clean tech, and we are somewhere in the middle. We are dependent on the US and dependent on China and the most aggressive in the transformation, but not having ownership of elements of both sides. So where is the role of Europe? How can we address that? Second, we need to get it right because it's actually expensive. We are spending somewhere like 400 to 500 billion a year to import 400 to 500 billion euros a year to import fossil fuels. So actually, if we could reduce our dependency, we could actually pay for lots of investments, but we are stagnating. Actually, electrification, and I'll come to that when I talk about the solution, is stagnating in Europe. We are 23% electrification on primary energy demand, whilst China is actually increasing by 1 percentage point a year, and it's actually far ahead of us. So again, Europe needs to up its game. But how do we do that? And the last one is maybe even the most difficult one. We need more interdependence and cooperation in Europe to become more independent. So if we want to actually be less dependent on fossil imports, that means we need more cooperation in Europe, not less. But we all know the challenges that Europe is facing right now in actually increasing cooperation. But I can tell you, if we go to a national level, if we actually focus on national policies, we will not get the cooperation which we need for more independence. So actually, energy of security of supply is not a simple topic in this environment, in which we don't know our role, in which we are actually confronted with other blocs that actually have better starting positions in an environment where politically we are moving in the wrong direction compared to the solution that we would need to address. But so now, second question, what is actually security of supply? Energy security. In the past, the answer was easy. You ask an engineer, and the engineer would have told you, energy security is if we have enough capacity of oil, capacity of gas, pipeline capacity, capacity of power generation for any demand at any moment in time. And it was actually a topic that engineers could solve quite easily. You build enough power stations, you build enough oil storages, you build enough import terminals, you're done. And that was security of supply, energy security. But today, it's actually getting more complicated. The world which we are building is a more renewable world, you all know that. In a more renewable world, capacity by itself is not enough. We need capacity at the right moment in time, because we don't always have wind, we don't always have sun, for example, at night, whatever. So we need actually flexibility in the system, so that we don't only have enough capacity, but we have it when we need it. This is where storages come in, batteries, etc., etc. And when you talk about innovation, you can talk about all of that. But so it's actually, that means we need to build also a much more digital system. Because the system of the future can only work if it's fully digitized, if we can control everything at any moment in time. And I'll just give you one example. E.ON, we in our grid, actually, we have right now, in the October of 23, we had only in the German grid 1 million renewables connected to our grid. We are going to get the second million, and it took us 15 years to connect 1 million assets. We are going to connect the second million in probably less than 2.5 years. Yeah, and then the third one, we assume that we will have 6 million connected assets until 2030. It's clear, if you have 6 million connected assets, you're either fully digitized or you're done. You can't control it. But if you're fully digitized, it means cyber becomes a big issue. And we cannot avoid cyber becoming an issue because we cannot avoid becoming fully digital. The analog systems of the past were pretty safe against cyber attacks. That's history. So we actually are facing new threats. We are also facing new threats physically. You have all seen, or maybe you have seen it, obviously everybody in the energy industry has seen that the Baltics finally have stopped the synchronization with the Russian grid. Finally, they're now synchronized with the European grid. The way to get there was to build the so-called Baltic ring. So we connected the Baltics, rather than with Russia, we connected them with Finland, with Sweden, and then down to the south with Poland. But you have all seen the attacks on the Baltic subsea cables, physical attacks, and I call them attacks because I don't believe that these were bad luck, chance incidents, whatever, yeah? But that obviously is a real threat for the Baltic system, because you synchronize to a different system, but then the link to that system becomes weak. This puts you under stress. So physical threats, so we need more resilience because of cyber, because of the physical threats, and also because of more and more actually climate events. The floodings, for example, which we have seen, my company in the Ahrtal, in the Czech Republic, in Sweden, we have constantly seen, disastrous floods, and our systems have not been built for that. We built our transformer stations close to rivers. Yeah? It was actually quite convenient. You can actually put the transformer easily there. Actually, that's the wrong approach in the future. Yeah? So, what is security of supply? Security of supply is if you have enough capacity, if you have enough flexibility, if you have enough resilience. And that's a much bigger challenge than it has been in the past. Now, what is the solution? The solution is more investments and more electrification. More investments because we need to build a new system. And if you allow me, I'll just quote my own numbers and then some Euroelectric numbers. Euroelectric is the European Electricity Foundation, and I'm their president as well. And E.ON, when I started in 21, had an rolling investment plan of 21 billion euros. Our rolling investment plan is now 42 billion 3 years later. So we are doubling it in 3 years, and we are deploying that capital. And it's actually hard to deploy because it's not like we're just adding, 2 additional projects which cost 10 billion each, and that's it. It's actually thousands of projects that you need to deliver on the ground because we are talking about distributed infrastructure. We are estimating in Europe that we need to double the investments into infrastructure. We have seen how expensive lacking infrastructure is in the crisis of 22. We need to triple probably investments in the rest of the energy system. But it's going to be the most efficient solution that we can actually bring. If we electrify mobility and if we electrify heat, we can reduce overproportionally our primary energy demand. because electricity is more efficient than using primary fuels for heating or for mobility purposes. Yeah? And therefore, actually electrification is part of the solution, but to do that in a way which is affordable, we need more innovation. And that brings us now to the theme of today and tomorrow. More innovation to make it affordable, more innovation to make our system flexible, more innovation to make our system resilient. So actually, if you're an innovator, I mean, the car industry is probably an acceptable place, but the place to go is actually the energy industry. You need to allow me to say that even here at the Quandt Foundation, because if you want to do something meaningful that really matters to society, which is absolutely essential for society today and in the future, which is essential for making the future also sustainable, then you need to deliver all innovation that you can actually deliver. And so you want to solve cool problems and apply new technologies, join the energy industry. E.ON is a good starting place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonhard. Thank you very much for your inspiring keynote. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a clicker in my hand, and there's a reason for that. I'm coming to that in a moment. I'm very excited about the next section with the somewhat pompous title, Powering the Future. It features 4 highly innovative tech startups, all of which aim to play a significant role in the energy system of the future. All 4 are part of the Respond program, the Respond Accelerator program I've mentioned before. All 4 will now present their vision of what the energy system will look like in the future in their view. Each pitch is limited to 4 minutes. I'm saying that more in that direction. Maximum 5. Maximum 5. That's what they call a deep dive session at the BMW Foundation, by the way. There's no jury, except perhaps the intensity of your applause. That's up to you, and there is no questions. If you have questions, though, of course, grab the entrepreneur right after their pitch, or grab them on LinkedIn later on. Enough words. Let's begin, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start with Wei Wu from Heatrix on the topic of industrial heat. The applause is yours.
So, yeah, hello everyone. I was told that I have 5 minutes, so now I think I have to improvise to stay at 4 minutes. So 4 out of 10 energy-intensive companies in Germany are considering to relocate their production. The reasons are rising energy costs because of stricter regulations and also rising CO2 costs. The other one is what we are actually here today is for, of course, energy security. So they're facing a volatile energy supply, especially rising after the start of the Ukrainian war. And last, uncertain energy policy. I mean, the goal is clear, net zero by 2050, but the how is still something mysterious somehow for most of them. And if you look at some numbers, the industry sector is responsible for about 30% of energy consumption, and 67% of that is actually used for process heat. And how do they produce process heat? That is temperature range of roughly 100 to 1500 degrees C and beyond, and that's by burning fossil fuels, more than 70%. That's why 18% of global CO2 emissions are caused by industrial process heat. We want to change that. Our mission at Heatrix is to not only help energy-intensive companies to stay competitive, also in the country where they built their company like decades ago, and also reduce their carbon emissions. The idea is pretty simple. We just used renewable electricity and convert it into heat. So before it was the other way, it was heat converting to electricity. We do it another way now with renewables. Our system consists of 2 components. One is an electrical air heater that basically works like a huge hair dryer that heats up air up to 1500 degrees C, which you can then use to smelt metals or burn bricks or just dry materials. And we couple the heater with the thermal energy storage to balance out the renewable fluctuations. Our idea is not to build new furnaces, but rather retrofit the existing ones. In the simplest case, that means just take the gas burner out, plug in like a hot air duct, and the air coming from our system is let into the oven, which then can be used to burn the materials. Here, that's the use case for a brick manufacturing company. Our first target customers are small to medium enterprises because we think they are the ones who are facing the most challenges here. We are providing a compact and scalable solution. That means that we can take out the gas burners one by one, starting with the first one, the second one, that they have like a hybrid operation, first partially gas and partially electricity, and gradually switch to green heat, depending on the access to renewable electricity, or even to access to grid connection. I think grid connection is also quite a challenge here for the whole energy transition. The second one is, of course, the cost. So how do we use electricity, which is actually more expensive, to be cheaper than at the end? The answer is to reduce the energy consumption in general. And with our heater, we can just reuse the waste heat, which comes out at probably 200 degrees C, and then reheat it up to the desired temperature. And of course, with the thermal energy storage, you can decouple the electricity supply from the heat demand, and so you are totally independent from renewable fluctuations. In general, globally speaking, with our system, reduce carbon emissions, reduce the energy consumption, and also reduce expensive grid infrastructure. We have secured a couple of letters of intent to do pilots. We, yes, it was at 4 minutes of 5. So, yeah, 2 projects are currently in commission, and we are always looking for partners to start the journey with us. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your pitch and for your presentation, Wei Wu from Heatrix. I'll now pass on the microphone to Philipp Mann from the startup TerraLayer. It's a German-Swiss startup, and the topic is energy storage. Philipp, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here today. My name is Philipp Mann. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of TerraLayer. So what is TerraLayer? We are a fully integrated energy flexibility provider. So Mr. Birnbaum already made a great introduction about the importance of that. But what does energy flexibility actually mean? And basically, our energy system is going more and more towards wind and solar. Obviously, there's no sun at night. We don't always have wind. And so that means we have a massive constraint on our grids. And also, when we don't have renewables active, we actually need to use fossil fuels, which is very costly and also very bad for the environment. So as a result, we have a lot of renewable energy that is actually wasted when we have too much of it, and we have the fossil fuels that essentially drive us not as quickly towards net zero as we would like. So there are 2 solutions to that. The first one is you can continue to build out grids, and that's a very, frankly, slow and very expensive solution. We need to do it in any case, but it's too slow. Or we can build out energy storage capacity, and specifically batteries. So energy storage provides the flexibility that is needed to keep the electricity flowing when there's no sunshine and no wind, and also to move it across the grid in a much more efficient way. However, there's a lot of hype recently about energy storage, and we read about it a lot in the news. But one thing that people often forget is it's an active asset class. So unlike solar or wind, where you can't really decide when it produces power, you actually actively need to manage your battery. And the problem is, we believe that the batteries that we have today have actually been commercialized the wrong way around. So basically, battery owners today develop the land, they find a grid connection, they go to someone to build the battery, but then they typically don't have the commercialization capabilities in-house. They either go to a trader who will trade their battery as a service, charging it when it's cheap, discharging when it's expensive, or go to a large utility, maybe like E.ON, to actually rent the capacity. So either have rented capacity, I don't get the best price, or I need to underwrite the trading capabilities of someone. And once I'm there, it's really hard to switch, and once I'm locked in, that really doesn't drive the bankability of this asset class. So what we said, asset owners don't get great returns. That's a massive problem. And flexibility buyers, large utilities, data centers, anyone who really is a large producer or consumer of power, doesn't have an easy way of actually procuring physical energy flexibility. So that's basically what we do. We have three key innovations or disruptions that solve this. The first is that we aggregate the batteries that we manage. Very importantly, these are both assets that we own on balance sheet, as well as other infrastructure investors. We bundle the assets, we virtualize the assets, essentially creating one large battery, and then selling slices of this battery with contract lengths between 15 minutes for traders, for instance, and up to 15 years for large power consumers like data centers. The second thing that we do is we go to large consumers and producers of power, and we create proprietary energy products where we sell them profile shaping products to optimize their power purchase agreement portfolios, etc. And then last but not least, because we actually manage all the physical infrastructure of the assets, we can optimize the portfolio, optimize the state of charge of different batteries, make sure the batteries cycle less, give them more lifetime, and actually enhance more value there. So this is basically how it looks. The TerraLayer flexibility platform manages assets that we own and other assets. We aggregate all the assets. We bundle them, creating essentially an energy cloud. We bundle those assets. And then we go to the different customer groups. You can see them at the top here: utilities, traders, power producers, and large corporates, hypothetically also BMW, that can, of course, access this flexibility. So it makes it super easy for the energy producer or consumer to tap into the flexibility without the need to actually own the asset on balance sheet. So, and by aggregating all these assets, we can essentially optimize across the platform because we aggregate all the load profiles of the different customers and de-aggregate them across the physical portfolio. So basically, the pitch is very simple. You have all the benefits of a physical battery, with one exception. So if you want a battery next to your warehouse because you're scared of a tree on your transmission line, that we can't fix. But everything else, you have the benefits of a battery without the need to own it, operate it, finance it, and obviously develop it as well. So it's basically, as we like to say, AWS for power. So where will we be by the end of the year? We started the company roughly 2 years ago. We're a lean, mean team of 35 people, bringing roughly triple-digit megawatts and the low triple-digit megawatts live by the end of the year. This year, on balance sheet, a similar amount from other infrastructure owners. We will likely already be EBITDA positive towards the end of this year, probably even free cash flow positive in the first half of next year. So it really shows the power of integrating software with real assets, and we will grow 10x year on year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation, Philip. Excellent. I love when deep tech startups use the phrase "it's based on a simple idea." Anyway, thank you very much, Philip. And now, Asya Kazdi, she will explain the value proposition and the business model of the startup Milvus Advanced. Welcome on stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for the invitation. So my name is Asya, and I'm CEO of Milvus Advanced, and we create rare metals with nanomaterials. So Eba mentioned that she had an engineering base. I have a chemistry base, and I have worked across different renewable sectors, such as batteries, hydrogen, and solar cells. At the core of all this reaction, of this technology, there are metals that are driving the reaction. So basically, as we transition to the green technologies, we will require more metals. The problem is that metals are not rejuvenated by Earth, and so we will require more and more. In fact, actually, in the last 50 years, we used more metals than since the beginning of our existence as a human species. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that no matter how we will be sophisticated in the future, we won't be able to transition into green, sustainable technology-based society because we won't have enough of metals. At Milvus, we approach the problem differently. So because metals are needed, what we're thinking is that what we do is that we take the properties of the metals needed, like for example, platinum for hydrogen, lithium for batteries, and substitute these properties of the metal onto nano-engineered structures. So how it works is not magic. Basically, we have We blend metal salts that are very cheap, like copper, nickel, iron, manganese. We blend them at the nanoscale synergistically, and then what we do is that we create these nano-engineered structures like this one, for example, that are long, thin, metallic nano hair that are called nanowires. And by blending these elements, creating these alloys, what we create basically is an alternative to platinum, is copper nickel that just behave like platinum in a hydrogen like electrolyzer, for example. So I will be very quick because 4 minutes is very short. So basically, why is critical? Right now, we don't have enough platinum on Earth for 2025. There is like a 50 tons, like a shortage of supply between the demand and the supply for platinum. So it's critical that we find substitutes. And also, this drives the price of platinum. Right now, a pure platinum costs $350 per gram, on average, whereas our Milvus platinum that behave just like platinum costs like a fraction of this price. So basically, we have big ambition, and we have created nanomaterials across different sectors, but we use hydrogen as a test bed because we believe that hydrogen catalysis and electrolyte catalysis in general will be necessary to drive the green transition. Basically, we will need a blend of these technologies. And in fact, we have created our own prototype electrolyzer that we have tested, and what we have shown is that our catalyst, both for platinum and iridium, in the electrolyzer perform twice as efficient as a platinum-iridium combo, while the cost of catalyst is a fraction of the price, and they are super durable. In fact, we have actually validated our catalyst with a big manufacturing company, and we are ready actually to start like production and also selling by this Q1. So yes, as I mentioned, like we are like ready to generate revenue. And because I have 30 seconds left, I'll just mention the team. So we are a very lean team, and we have brought the team from all over the world. We are like a total of 10. Now we have just like closed around, like so we have like more cash, and then we are hiring actually. Now in Q1, like we'll have like our C-suite is expanding. So in other words, the theme of tonight is energy security, and we believe that basically metals are the heart of energy security. And basically, our solution is like by going to the nano, we use less metals, but at the same time, we're actually making sure that we don't deplete Earth of all the metals. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Asya. Thank you very, very much. And now for our last pitch, and the topic of geologic hydrogen. Welcome to Alan Zhao, founder of Hestia Energy. Big round of applause.
Testing. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Zhao, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Hestia Energy, a pre-seed venture-backed startup based out of the Bay Area in California. Now, unlike the other founders here, great job, by the way, I am not actually going to pitch my own startup. I am going to review and hopefully get interest and excitement in the space of geologic hydrogen, which we believe may supercharge the entire energy transition. The field is only 2 years old, so please keep in mind that a lot of what I tell you now is fairly speculative, but we're quite excited by the space. Now, I want to revisit the fundamental root of why we're all here, about energy. Because realistically, the reason we are here is because hydrocarbons pretty much just come out of the ground when we drill for oil. We don't make oil. If I were to synthetically make gasoline or jet fuel, it would be far too expensive for me to put inside an engine and burn it once. But instead, all we have to do is drill into the planet and let the weight of the rock beneath us push the oil out. It is incredibly difficult to compete with that. Incredibly difficult. So if you look at something like batteries, batteries today, after 150 years of development, are still 1/60th the energy density of gasoline. That's really hard to compete. And a lot of industries like ammonia, concrete, synthetic aviation, require other solutions than electrification. Now, hydrogen is extremely interesting because if you burn it, it only produces water, and it's incredibly energy dense. But if I were to make hydrogen by cracking natural gas, I would make 12 kilos of CO2 for every kilo of hydrogen I get. And if I were to electrolyze it, I would have to pay 8 to 12 euros or dollars per kilogram. So no real good solutions here. It's quite clear that there is an unmet capability gap in the energy transition. So what if we could find a fuel that is like hydrocarbons, that comes out of the ground as soon as we drill, and might be able to power us for hundreds of years? And that is the breakthrough that happened a couple of years ago, when we realized that the Earth could be producing and transporting massive amounts of hydrogen to the surface where we can access it. Again, it's decently speculative as a space, but as of the last couple of years, we've made quite a lot of progress in modeling how much there could actually be. And the answer is an insane amount. The US Geological Survey has put out a recent study talking about 5.6 trillion tons of hydrogen potentially available in global reserves. That's insane. 2% of that would be enough to fulfill the 2050 hydrogen demands. Net zero, 2050, which is a lot more than we use today, for centuries. And if we were talking about 1%, that would still be almost all of the global natural gas reserves on the planet today. So I appreciate all the work that everyone is doing for sustainability, for efficiency, but if we can unlock multiples of energy, that is a game changer for the entire climate. And I want to remind you that this hydrogen may just come out of the ground at potentially less than $1 or €1 per kilogram. And that goes to the heart of why we are all worried about the climate today. That directly competes with hydrocarbons on price and utility. And that is the first technology I've ever encountered that might be able to do that. We're encouraged to see that people have found hydrogen all around the world in the last 2 years, basically as soon as we started looking. And it really does seem like we were just looking with the wrong tools in the wrong places for hydrogen all of this time. So feel free to reach out if you want more information on this, but happy to talk more about this. There's a lot of depth to this, and it's a very complicated space. I also want to thank Breakthrough, I believe they're here somewhere, for doing so much to stimulate the space, and for Visionaries Tomorrow for being fantastic investors in us. Thank you.
Very much, Alan. Thank you very much to all 4 of you for your presentations. In our next section, we will now shift the focus significantly more from pure innovation to more scaling up. So this means we will discuss successful scale-ups and the lessons we can replicate. How can we replicate those successes? In case you're not familiar, let me take this opportunity to provide you with a little background about the role of the BMW Foundation. The Foundation is highly active through its Energy Resilience Leadership Group. That's a vibrant Mm.
Mach bitte Schluss jetzt.
So I guess, ladies and gentlemen, this applause here downstairs tells us that the last conversation is closed, and we continue here on the so-called main stage for our last two topics today. One is a conversation, and then we have a closing keynote. So may I ask you to join us here on the main stage and to take your seat, and so that we can proceed and be on time at the Schumann's Tagesbar, but I'll come later to that. Thank you very much. Michi?
Übergehen.
Dani, machst du mal kurz aus, bitte? Sollen wir die Musik einspielen?
Ja. Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here on the main stage. Could you please take your seats? Could you please take your seats? Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to have a conversation here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is with great pleasure that I now have the honor to... It's too loud still. Maybe you can help me a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, can you do me a favor? Can you please either go upstairs and continue your talks and conversations, or take a seat here at the main stage, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit too loud for having a decent conversation here on the main stage. Thank you very much. Please take your seats. Thank you very much. All right, so it's with great pleasure that I now have the honor of introducing the next panel. The statements, perspectives, and insights from our esteemed guests, I think, will help us tremendously to better contextualize the wealth of information presented by the 10 startups we have just seen and you have heard in your silent disco moments. Ladies and gentlemen, it's no secret that Europe in particular, it's currently at a crossroads. On many levels and unfortunately in various dimensions. We see that almost on a day-to-day basis. One of these critical dimensions is energy security and climate resilience. And that is precisely what our next panel will focus on. Recent geopolitical shifts have underscored the urgency of innovation in the energy sector. I think we all can agree on that. The reasons are quite obvious, are quite clear. There's war, there's conflict, intensifying energy competition, and shifting global alliances. This upcoming panel, ladies and gentlemen, will explore whether ecosystems, deep tech breakthroughs, and strategic collaboration can position Europe not just as a participant, but as a global leader in green energy innovation, or whether this vision is overly optimistic, to put it mildly, if not naive. So we're thrilled to have the opportunity to discuss this crucial topic over the next 25 minutes or so with three absolute experts in this field. Let me begin by introducing Rhea Hamilton. Rhea Hamilton, she's a managing director on the Beyond Net Zero team at General Atlantic. Rhea brings nearly 2 decades of investment experience focused on climate and sustainability. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to welcome Rhea Hamilton on stage. Next on the stage is Tim Böltgen, the founder and CEO of Ineratech. What is Ineratech? Ineratech is a pioneer in the development and the production of synthetic fuels. They recently raised over 100 million euros in a funding round to advance e-fuels development. Congratulations, Tim, and welcome on stage. And last, but certainly not least, allow me to introduce Michael Schäfer, whom many of you, of course, know because he serves as president of the European Innovation Council. Michael Schäfer has an impressive professional background, spanning more than 20 years, you don't look like that, 20 years in innovation and impact investment. Yet what you might not know, as regional minister of Gelderland, he was even nominated as the best regional politician in the Netherlands. Welcome on stage, Michael Schäfer. So is that true? Over 100 million, you raised 100 million?
118.
When was that?
End of 2023.
Something left?
A little bit.
Okay, good to know for the investors. Thank you very much for being with me on stage here tonight. Michael, I would like to start with you. Jean Monnet once said that Europe's increasing integration has always been a result of its crises. Does this statement, in your opinion, still hold true today? In other words, should Europe actually be grateful for Washington's wake-up calls that we're receiving on a regular basis?
Well, the interesting thing is that Europe is facing almost with any year a crisis. So it started with the financial crisis 2008, 2009, and a lot of thinking on public investment started then. Then we had the COVID crisis in 2019, which was a big boost for the urgency in healthcare and also in other innovations. Then we get the Ukrainian war in 22. Then we got probably what we now have, Washington and the AI battle. And every time it's, let's say, it's rethinking how do we work. But it's an old history. I mean, you mentioned 20 years. I started to work in the area in 85 when we lost the battle for the mainframe computers. So that was the origin of FP1, the first framework program on innovation. Now we are preparing FP10, the 10th framework program.
But are we currently at a crossroads? So is the situation we're facing right now somehow different from the situations we used to face a couple of years ago? Ria, what's your take on that? Especially maybe you can also elaborate a little bit on the situation of this Munich Security Conference. Is it a special Munich? Is it going to be a special Munich Security Conference in light of what happened this week in Paris and in Washington?
So there's a lot in that question. I guess maybe I'll start with, thinking about, we've had crises in the past and where are we today? And I remember, well, first of all, I've been investing in this area for well over 20 years. So we've been through ups and downs. And when we had the COVID crisis and the Ukrainian war, everyone thought, at that point in time, I think the energy transition was at the top of everyone's list and everyone was setting net zero targets. And everyone thought, that's it, it's the end, we're at crisis. And actually went the other way, right? People doubled down on their net zero targets. And, as a result of the Ukraine war and energy security, we doubled down on renewables in Europe, and we saw a huge explosion going into 2023. So I think there's a lot of things happening in the market today, and there's a lot of things you could say, well, quite negative what's going forward. And maybe we don't know what's coming next because it seems to change, day by day. At the same time, there are things that we do know. Energy security continues to be a driver, and that can be a driver in a very positive sense. We do know that there's going to be continued demand for electrons. And I specifically say electrons because the digital economy plays an important role. We have hungry data centers. We've got automation that's happening. And so we know that's going to be an upward trend. And we've got renewable energy today, and people actually talk about, well, it's going to slow down, et cetera, but it's available today, and it's very cost effective, and it's going to continue to go upwards. And we have to obviously manage that with its grid and flexibility, et cetera, which means there's still a huge amount of opportunity despite potentially a lot of unknowns in the market today. There's big drivers to continue this effort going forward. So for me, I guess when I think about today, hopefully it's to continue to get everybody on the same track with these opportunities that lay ahead for us.
Michiel?
Well, it's important to remind that we have 4 crises. We have an energy security problem, and I heard 23%, so that it's on a way of solving. We have a material crisis problem. There we stand at 1%. We have a protein crisis problem, that we import feed for animals and to transform that into meat, but being vegetarian is more effective, so that's the third one. And the fourth one, and then we don't realize that, especially the other one, we have a productivity crisis.
A productivity crisis.
Yeah, we have an aging population, and we have to digitize and automate far more in order to keep a level of welfare. And those 4 crises are long-term, but we get more aware of them when we have one of these crises. But the long-term is already a long-term for a long time. And we have to, and the most important thing is, we have to put all together our savings, our pension funds, our money where our mouth is. And that's something in Europe that's difficult.
So question goes to all of you. What represents then the greater challenge for Europe? Is it rather internal pressures or external factors, not just in a geopolitical sense? Because what you just said is things that are also internal fragmentation and internal problems that have to be solved, right?
The answer is in addressing our internal fragmentation and our internal, well, let's say, timidity. And so to realize that there are a number of big challenges, that the savings are available in Europe. Every year, we invest 600 billion euros of savings in the US. If we would invest those in Europe, we would have simply solved the problem what Draghi addresses in reports. We need about 800 billion euros more every year to invest in energy, well, all the ones we mentioned, and Tim is a very good example. We had that money. We have not organized it well. And so it's an organizational problem and, let's say, the political will of doing that.
You want to comment on that, Svea?
Look, I think there is a lot of opportunity to reinvest these dollars. If you think about the technology, we've heard it today, right? There's fantastic technology out there, and statistically, I think they say something like 80% of the technology exists that can get us on a path to net zero and help us through the transition, but only 10% is commercial. So if we can actually take some of these euros and reinvest them into helping to scale these technologies, I think there's a real opportunity for Europe to get competitive advantage. But we have to make that switch from 80%, to the 10% to increasing that.
I mean, adding here, so I'm also optimistic that we're on a good path. If we talk about electrons, we also need to talk about molecules, because electrons will not only bring us to net zero, so we need these. I even brought it like sustainable aviation fuel, shipping fuel, naphtha for the chemical industry. At the end, we also want to produce something, and I'm not so optimistic about the green molecules pathway, because there's a lot of debate about how to utilize hydrogen, how to utilize renewable energy for producing hydrogen and the derivatives. Regulation is high, so Europe set standards. The standards are now resulting in, on the one side of the Atlantic, drill baby drill, all the oil and gas majors backing out of their renewable energy plans. The hydrogen market potentially came to a stall, so everybody is looking for offtakes. No projects are going to be realized. All the investments in the infrastructure and electrolyzers are going to be delayed. So, and if we keep continuing like that, then we clearly will miss our net zero goals.
Tim, we spoke a lot about in the previous sections a lot about innovation and economic competitiveness in our previous presentations. What steps, in your opinion, must we take to harness the power of innovation to strengthen European economies? What role does collaboration play within this ecosystem?
I mean, collaboration is key. We have international investors, but our core investors are coming from all over Europe. And I think the one thing what we cannot change, but hopefully you can change, is that we need to speak with one voice. That we need a united Europe to really concentrate the power that we are having. The other point is that we need to carefully review regulation. So regulation is good. If it comes to AI, if it comes to renewable energy, if it comes about utilization of green energy, we don't need to, and we should not enforce like lock-in effects. But the problem really is that the, let's say, all the renewable goals we have for producing green hydrogen, for producing green molecules, they are too shy. They are, let's say, they can. There's revision clauses by 2027, so it's not investment friendly. So whenever we go out, we have investors from the US, it takes us weeks and months to explain them what is the business case behind it, why they should invest in Europe, and that's something what we really need to change.
Okay, so what do you tell those investors who ask that questions?
So I think there's the general understanding for now that we will at some point in time need these green molecules, these green fuels, because they are hard to abate sectors which cannot be electrified directly. We still have the technology angle. Our innovation is that there's no other technology that can produce these green fuels as cheap and as efficiently as we do. But at the end, we are also very closely tied to the entire upstream chain. So how cheap can we produce the green hydrogen? And the result will, last but not least, be that the production will not take place in Europe, but the production will potentially take place in South America, in East Asia, wherever, let's say, there's a greater unlocking potential than in Europe. And that's a big risk if even the producers, even the companies that have the technology, go out of Europe to produce there, because it's just much more beneficial.
Absolutely. Michael.
Yeah, well, Ineratech is one of our laureates or beneficiaries. They got a grant from us, but it's a good example of how the scaling up went, because after the grant, Tim and his company got, let's say, substantial investment from the EIB, who's here present as well. So what we have to build in Europe, with 27 member states and 4 friends around us, is the whole system of an ecosystem of specialized investors, and let's say the whole funnel from, let's say, grant to public equity to private equity, institutional, non-institutional, and what we are currently building is that system. So we only put, let's say, 4 billion euros in the system, and that attracts around 12 billion euros private funding as well. And building that ecosystem is an important component. That's also why I'm here, because München is a very important city in that ecosystem. But that's something that has started. So one of the things we have created is the so-called Trusted Investor Network, and that makes it faster or simpler for, let's say, the wealthy countries, Germany, France, Scandinavia, and Netherlands, to invest also in promising Greek startups.
What have been the major roadblocks up to now that this scaling up system, let's call it that way, hasn't been in place yet? What are the major roadblocks? Why didn't it happen so far?
Well, it's a bit like Europe is a soccer field where, let's say, the outplayers are shy of giving the game to the hitter. So there's something that everyone's say, I want to do something, but someone else needs to go first. And what we basically did, okay, let's us be first. So a lot of regional governments, mine as well when I was a regional minister, national governments, have said, okay, if we don't start, no one else will follow.
No one else would do.
It's much easier to convince pension funds to co-invest. Say, well, we have done 3 billion. Would you like to join us? But if you shout to pension funds, please do more, that doesn't work. So the ecosystem also requires for public authorities to be less liberal. I'm a liberal, to be less liberal and say, okay, sometimes you need to play the ball and be the first to do that. And I think that's changing. My only fear is, I'm older than you think, I'm 61, it goes too slow. I'm not sure that we are giving the planet to our daughters in a better shape than we got it. So the time is of a pressure, and that's where crisis helps, because that helps to speed up the mobilization of people and capital.
So what kind of lessons can we learn from other regions where scaling up obviously works in a different way? North America, China, etc. Are there any lessons you are now implementing in your strategy? And what's your take on that, Rhea, as well?
I think it's a great question, because ultimately we're a late stage investor. What does that mean? A growth equity investor. We're not taking the technology risk, the early risk. We're also not the infrastructure. We call this the middle ground, which is often a gap. But then, what does it take for us to be getting excited to get behind a particular opportunity? And if there is any kind of regulatory risk, that scares a lot of investors away. So I think having some consistency, some visibility around the regulatory side is absolutely critical, because it's going to be very hard for investors to underwrite that. So if we can get in this broader system a view of what that looks like. Now, that said, what's driving this? Because I think there are different economies that are going faster, and subsidies have helped, but I think we have seen business models, and that's where we're trying to sort of get away from the regulatory side and say, where can we get highly scalable business models? And a lot of that is driven about unlocking obstacles and having to sort of ramp up your production. And that means, having at least maybe it's the right data to be able to prove out that this can scale. And then that's something obviously we'll look at. So we look at data, and we look at obviously the unit economics, which, as you're building up your plant, you're able to demonstrate. So we have seen in different parts of the world business models that don't require subsidies that are highly scalable. And if we can take those business models and bring them to other parts, that also helps, because it then takes the reliance off the subsidy side. We still need it all, but the more that we can do to push some of these highly scalable business models faster, the better we're going to be.
And I can also echo what my co-speakers said. So EIC, also other institutions, EIB, Breakthrough Energy, we just got the EU Catalyst grant. So they help us really to de-risk the technology. And I think what we do in Europe here is great on that. It's uncomparable to anywhere else in the world. The access to capital to really demonstrate your technology, de-risk the technology. But what is also, I mean, I can now also complain a lot about regulation, but at the end it also comes down to the entrepreneurs to build up the business models to really scale it, because also very often we hide too much behind like, okay, Europe is too fragmented, Europe maybe doesn't have the right market and so on. In the US is everything easier. But we have seen it also today from the pitches. I mean, if you come with a totally different mindset, with a US-based mindset, they have different business models. They go differently into the end applications, and
so
that's what we need to learn.
I'm a bit surprised that you said access to capital wasn't a real problem for you. Because that's usually what you hear from European startups, that access to capital is a huge problem.
On the earlier stage, is actually not. So we have really great access to capital. We have great institutions. So if the technology is right, if you have demonstrated that you can execute in the earliest, for let's say before you run into this valley of death, the access to capital, to capital is great. What we now need is really to double down to achieve also the climate goals, but for that we also need resilient business models, which are not relying purely only on subsidies, which are only functioning in a let's say limited ecosystem. Yeah. So they really need to be ready to scale.
And there's a time, right, when you need the subsidies. In particular, early on, if you're building a first-of-a-kind plant, you need the support to do that. But ultimately, if we want to get these technologies to scale, if we want to get to the commercialization side, they have to be self-sufficient. They have to have unit economics that are profitable and sustainable, because that's how you really get something from pilot to something that's really going to make a difference in Europe.
I don't think we should play ourselves down. Huh?
Yeah, so let's...
I mean, I think the fast-speed railway between San Francisco and LA will be ready by 2035. In the meanwhile, Europe has built 10,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. The second one is that I was at an AI conference in Paris. The quality of data we have in hospitals here is far better than the US. They need AI. We have SPSS that does the same work. So let's not forget that as one. Well, the other thing is, of course, Silicon Valley is great. But have you seen Nebraska? So the US is much more uneven in quality. So we have a number of qualities we have to improve. What I love with Ineratech, I went to see them in March. If you take the whole Rhine Valley, there's a concentration of manufacturing knowledge which nowhere else you have in the world. China is good in big volumes, but if you have to make special machinery, don't go to Ohio, go to Baden-Württemberg. But we don't mobilize those strengths enough.
So Michael, to end on a positive note, where do you see opportunities for Europe to emerge maybe even stronger from this current crisis and challenges? What makes you optimistic?
Well, not be fooled by others. And when you do driving lessons, if you're in a driving lesson in a narrow field, narrow alley, look far away. So look at the long-term challenges. The long-term challenges is energy, is materials, is proteins. And it's basically to secure a peaceful area around us. From Gaza to Morocco, and from Gaza to Leningrad, to have, let's say, an area where we have, let's say, a good division of labor. And those challenges are major, and we have to solve them. And we should solve them ourselves, not relying on the Americans to do it on our behalf.
Yep. Michael Schäfer, Ray Hamilton, Tim Birkin, thank you very much for that conversation, and this applause goes to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you might wonder why I got these little letters. I'll tell you in a second. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first love letter I got says, keynote, Mr. Jackson is in traffic jam. Please extend the panel. The second one, ladies and gentlemen, says, Mr. Jackson doesn't make it. Please stop the panel. So now, actually, we're almost done, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, we don't have a keynote, but I think we had a a fantastic first day, a very dynamic and a very inspiring first day here at the BMW Foundation's Pavilion. I would like to express my gratitude to our fantastic guests and to you for your attention, to the team of the BMW Foundation, which has worked behind the scenes over the course of the last weeks and months. Thank you very much, and I think you should give them a warm round of applause. So now, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering what's next. Here's the answer. This evening, right now, there will be a reception hosted by the BMW Foundation, Herbert Quandt, just some 3 minutes walk away from here at a place, it's called Schumann's Tagesbar, which should be familiar to those in Munich. And those who don't know Schumann's Tagesbar, I highly recommend going there for 2 reasons. First of all, it's a great bar. And second, we need to be out here in about 15 minutes because there's going to be another event here. If tonight, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't run too late, tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. you're invited to a breakfast conversation with a few very, very special guests. Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council, Maria Gabriel, formerly Bulgaria's Minister of Foreign Affairs and now President of the Robert Schuman Institute, Arantxa González, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain and now Dean at the Paris School of International Affairs at the legendary Sciences Po in Paris. Also joining at the breakfast table will be Kaja Kallas, Vice President of the European Commission, and Nancy Pelosi, as you all know, former Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. So what a lineup for a breakfast. You're welcome to join if you wish, and as mentioned, coffee and some inspiration will be served tomorrow morning by 7:30 a.m. at this venue, moderated by our colleague Grégoire Rose. Thank you very much for your attention. We hope to manage to have shaken up you a little bit in a gently manner, and I hope you enjoy the evening. Thank you.